Talk about young shakes. Chicago 2 represent. Jesse James. And this is for my city.
Hey, I do it for my city. Dog, I don't plan on going down. If he think I'm going down, then he gone first round. For my city. Dog, I ain't never been a jumping. If he thinking I'm
Hello, this is Lacy L from Rice Fame Group. And today's chat with Hbcu champions features head coach Tori Tyson from Howard University. Her softball program won the 2022 MEAC Championship this year. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're glad to have you. First and foremost, we want to congratulate you on your championship this year.
I appreciate it.
Great. So first thing is we want to know more about you. So could you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Southern California, grew up with a softball family. I have 3 sisters, 1 older, 2 younger. My dad played baseball growing up, had nothing but girls, and we all ended up playing softball. And my sister ended up going to the University of Washington, and I went to University of Nebraska. One of my little sisters followed me there. We didn't play together there, but she followed me out there, and whole family is involved in softball, so it's definitely our family sport. My dad created an organization where he coached me out here, and it kind of just blew up and turned into a big thing. After I was done with softball at Nebraska, I was actually working at State Farm and was feeling really unfulfilled, and life was happening, and I got into college coaching a year after I had my daughter, and I started at Bethune-Cookman, and I just fell in love with HBCUs. It was my first experience, and I always wanted to when I left, I didn't really want to leave, but being a Black coach, especially in softball, being a Black coach, coaching in an HBCU is kind of just like the norm. And I wanted to prove that I could beat anybody with like resources on a level playing field. And I ended up taking an opportunity at Cal State Fullerton, went to University of Maryland, and then coached pro for a summer. And when Howard opened up, it was right down the street and exactly where I was supposed to be. So I got to go back to an HBCU, and not because I had to go there, but because I wanted to be there. And I think that matters, and it really helped in trying to change the culture when I took over the job. And this program just means so much to me. We haven't even scratched the surface for like my wildest dreams for what I want to do. But this year was definitely something that was on the short list. And I'm just so grateful that I got to experience it with the players and my assistant coach, because it's a lot of grind that went behind the scenes to make that happen.
Okay. How long have you been there, Howard?
Well, this past season was actually my first full year here. I had never had a full year, but I started the journey in like November of 2018.
Okay. All right. Well, like you said, this year, it seemed like everything came full circle, and you got your first one out the way. So, how did that feel? How did you celebrate that one?
I mean, it felt really good. Obviously, anytime you win a championship, life was happening. So to be fair, and to be honest, like, you always dream of like what it's gonna feel like and what it's gonna look like when you win your first one. Considering all the circumstances behind this year, I did not think the first one was gonna like feel this way. I thought life would just be perfect and it would just be this amazing thing, and then we'd win one and everything would just take off and it would be perfect from there. And like, obviously, right, like, shame on me for thinking that I dictate the plans and how things work out. So it was a grind, and it was the most rigorous, beautiful experience that I've had in my playing and or coaching career. And again, I'm grateful, and it'll be a story and it'll be a feeling I'll never forget. To be honest, for 99% of the game, it felt surreal. Obviously, we had to double dip a team that I have a ton of respect for. And that had just, quite frankly, been there. Howard had not been in a situation to win a championship, so it's tough to win games you've never been in. And so the odds, I didn't feel like, were with us. But I'm going to always bet on myself, and I'm going to bet on my program, and I just bet right this year.
Okay. So, as far as softball this year, who were some of your toughest opponents?
Well, obviously the 2 seed Florida State, I would say in postseason, but just like kind of through the regular season, our Morgan State battles, I feel like always kind of help prepare you for the tournament. It is an excellent rivalry. And I thought that those were obviously them and Norfolk State always keep us on our toes. And I thought that I respect all of our opponents. We had good games and good challenging games at some point with everybody during regular season. But obviously, when I think of or conference, Morgan State and Norfolk State, they always challenge us and push us to our limits. And I'm always grateful for that, for sure. When we're in our regular season, we went out to Campbell, and I thought Campbell University, their pitching is unreal. And so our hitters got to face some quality pitching. And then their offense, Marshall, I mean, it was early in our season and they absolutely just dogged our pitchers, and they had to grow so much from that. So, again, our preseason is just about preparing us for that exact tournament and that exact feel that we got at the end. And I thought our opponents did a really good job of prepping us.
Okay. Well, I was taught slow pitch. And even though I'm a fan of fast pitch, but slow pitch was what I was, brought up on. And just seeing those young ladies, those pitchers, and how they can throw the ball, and how they can they have movement almost just like baseball. Can you explain more of the differences between that?
I think the only real difference, are you talking about between softball and baseball or slow pitch?
Between slow pitch and fast pitch.
I'm probably not the best because I don't do slow pitch. I never engage. So I just know that obviously the speed of the game and the speed of the pitching is going to be different. It's closer reaction times, shorter base paths in softball. So I think our game is just a little bit faster paced, and you got to be, pretty good with your instincts and making the right decisions at the right time.
Okay. All right. So, tell us more. You mentioned a couple of your opponents out of the MEAC. Can you tell us about the conference overall?
About the MEAC conference. I think that it's growing, it's evolving. Obviously, losing FAMU and Bethune, just two staples of the program. I think that we are kind of all on the edge of like who's going to kind of take over and be those two premier programs. Wiggins is one of my idols. Like, I just think that what she was able to do at FAMU really set a bar, and a bar that I would love to reach one day. And Laura Watton, the same thing. They set a standard, and I think that we have a duty as coaches and our programs to kind of keep that legacy alive. And what made them great is that they went out and they found a way to compete outside of our conference. And they represented us well when they did make a postseason tournament. And that needs to be the duty of all of us. And I think that we're working on like who's next, right? What is that next dynasty going to look like? Or is it going to be every year you're just waiting because everyone's getting better and we're waiting to see at the end? And I thought that was fun too, is that you've seen the emergence in these last couple years of a couple other different programs, Howard being one, that just were not front runners, and them rising to the top. I felt like Morgan State had been trending, and they have continued to trend, and he does an impeccable job with the pitching there. But I think that everybody kind of has their thing, and I think at any given point, you're going to see, just about who rises in that week, right, in those last few days. And so I'm excited about where our program, where our conference is at and where it's going. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing my part in continuing to raise the bar.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I've noticed so far is that you talk probably more than any other coach I've talked to so far. You talk about almost like HBCU softball as a community. As you sound like the perfect ambassador for HBCU softball, because you do say words like we and where the overall community needs to go in order to, I guess, elevate the entire spectrum of HBCU softball? Because I know, you've coached at HBCU, you've coached at PWIs. I know, there are differences in how they are perceived by the general public.
Mm-hmm.
From your experience, what are some of the differences that you have seen, or even similarities?
I think the game is the game, and I think that the more that I can publicly share that the game is the game, and that I have athletes that can do the very same things that these athletes that are just given more opportunity because of resources and investment from their universities, I think that I have to do that. When I got to this conference and just in HBCUs in general, anyone that viewed me as a threat needs to check their heart, because at the end of the day, all I'm going to do is elevate. Because at the end of the day, I've been to the places that we're hoping to get to. So I don't get anything out of only getting Howard there. If I want Howard to rise, then everyone around us has to rise, because then they're going to respect our level of play in general. So it gives me great pleasure to see teams, HBCUs, go out and compete against PWIs or just better funded universities, because all that's doing is confirming my claim that there is really good softball played at the HBCU level. And so, again, it's a passion, and I guess it's something that I've kind of taken on just kind of by accident, by chance. But I have a profound level of just respect for these young women that go out there and find a way to do it despite what they don't have. I know that with my young ladies, we don't have a set practice field. We don't have a set hitting cage. And so when you see Howard win, you got to be a different kind of hater not to celebrate that, because you got to know that it did not come easy. We're getting after it. We're dropping our bases on a football field and having to use our imagination a lot of the times. And there's a lot of other HBCUs that do have it even a little bit easier than what we do. I do think that there's a fine line in, yes, I am an advocate that you got to find a way by any means, but I do not want to glorify the journey that for a woman in sport to be successful, it always has to come with struggle. And so I do think that there's a fine line in doing that, that sometimes we need to just be handed it to us as well, as that happens with some other sports, because when you hand it to us, we do good things. And I'm a firm believer in that. But in the meantime, we just got to keep pounding on the door, and they're going to have to hear me. As long as I'm winning, they're going to have to hear me. They're going to have to respect us. And that's where I think all of us kind of need to have our heart at. But we do have a duty to each year. This journey needs to get a little bit easier, not just for my university, but for all of them. And in order to get notoriety, I think that's a team effort. I think that that's really what's missing. Is I want student athletes to be able to come here and still say that they want to be an All-American and really believe it and really see it. I want them to be able to reach for those goals. Here's the reality: we're going to have to bridge that gap in order for HBCUs to start winning some of these regional games. It's going to take a large investment, and that's going to start from universities. So a big difference is the investment level. Every administration has a choice in what they invest in. And when one of us do get that blessing from our admin to be fully funded and to take over, we got to go make it do what it do, and that's going to elevate it for everybody. And I think that that's going to be on the admins, because at these other universities, yes, they have the resources, but those are still choices. Those are still choices to elevate their softball program. Softball is not a revenue sport, although it is turning into one at a lot of universities. But those administrators made a choice to invest in that program. And so that's just a difference. Is I don't know that we have quite yet had a program that was just completely dumped into. And when we do, that's going to be our true gauge of what we can do. In the meantime, we're just trying to fight out jabs and just, try to win a dogfight. And I'm down for that challenge. But like I said, I have a duty. All coaches have a duty, is we got to keep trying to knock down these doors of the people that can help with that change. But like I said, I think that the travel schedules, the recovery, of course, there's just things that our girls miss. And so I make that a duty for me, is I want their experience here to be as similar to my experience at University of Nebraska as reasonably possible. And what that was, though, is some of that stuff, it doesn't require money. That's consistency, knowing who their head coach is, what their head coach stands on, what their head coach is about. I knew that about my coach at Nebraska. Consistency and where they're going to go. That's something I want to give them. I want my girls to know where they're going to practice and when they're going to practice. There was just things that I didn't have to stress about there. The fueling, what we fuel our bodies with. I think that that's something that is different, right? In Nebraska, I could go get a steak at any given Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I know my girls, like we got to tell them to be mindful and go make smart choices on their own. I will say that there's a level to that independence, because I do think that my HBCU student athletes go into the world a little bit more prepared, and with a little bit more of an identity, opposed to my PWI student athletes, because when the core of your experience has been built on money, it's really, really hard for you to learn some lessons that require accountability, and kind of looking within and getting crafty. And that's life. Growing up and just being an adulting is a grind. And I think that our HBCU experience prepares them a little bit more for that. So while I do want more resources and stuff, I do love knowing that there's a peace of mind that I have women that are completely prepared to take over the world.
Okay. And so, speaking about those young ladies, can you talk more in depth about various individuals, especially your key contributors to your program?
I would say Kalita Dennis and Camille Navarro were just the foundation of kind of the culture change. I inherited them when I came in November, and it was a split locker room. And so regardless, people are going to have different experiences, right? But I remember going in, and as a coach, you got to make a decision. You got about 3 or 4, and you got these special kids in there that were at Howard because they wanted to make a difference, and they wanted to put Howard on the map. But then you had some that were at Howard because it was Howard. And then you had some that were in the middle and they could go anywhere with it, right? And so you had to be very careful in how you approached all these segments and learning. And I will say Kalita and Camille from day one, just special athletes, and just household names now, and they are the standard. When I think of what I want this program to look like, they are absolutely the standard of what it looks like, of just hard work. They take care of their business on and off the field. They are ambassadors for our sport and our team. And it showed. There was our first runs in NCAA history came off the bat of Kalita Dennis, and one of the hardest workers I've ever coached in. And I think both of them are Hall of Fame student athletes at Howard University. And what a blessing for me to be able to coach them. Our pitching, I thought, was just impeccable in regards to their maturity and the role that they played. And that doesn't mean that everything was perfect, but they endured and they worked really well together. And Annalise De La Roca, our transfer, Sydney Hicksonbaugh, and Tracy Mosley. And I think that there was something unique about all of them. And I truly believe they've left that mark now with our young pitchers and set a standard for them to reach. And I thought Kiana Carr, the year prior to us winning it, really helped build that bullpen standard. And having her still around meant everything. And so for her to still get to be there when we won the championship was everything, because although it didn't end the way she wanted, she set a standard. She set a bar. We had our highest fielding percentage, our highest win record under her. But the way that year was set up, we weren't brought back until January. So it was really tough to get going. But I think of those names when I think of this program. Xaria Simmons was a part of that. We had this big 3 in Kalita, Camille, and X. And they gave you something to believe in, just talented athletes that could go and compete against anybody, but especially outside of our conference. And I think that they are all MEAC performers. I think all 4 years, just amazing athletes. And our this freshman class is just so special. They're going to be sophomores now. And I thought it was just the perfect storm of mixing them. That sophomore and junior class, genuinely, they were kind of the staple. So they had to be here when it was ugly, when you were trying to figure it out. And I know that although they don't get the love, we don't get to this year if they don't stay the course and grind through the ugly. And I thought that our sophomores and juniors really did that. And then our seniors and our freshmen helped kind of bridge that gap. So it was just the perfect mix.
Okay.
Obviously, like
Oh,
the Vasquez, a Leilani Ricks, and a Peyton Quinones, like all of them. And I think there was moments, like they all had their moments. Mia Gonzalez, a freshman pitcher, was huge for us in the middle of the season. And Shalon McNeil, like Alyssa Watson had a game-changing catch at Morgan State. I thought that that was what was cool about this year, is that there was a moment for everybody in all classes. So it was really, really cool to be a part of.
okay. Now, I kind of mentioned something about the game itself earlier, and for those of us who might wonder about some of the lingo that we hear, you mentioned fielding percentage. I know there's a slugging percentage, and there's other percentages that other metrics that are used in baseball and softball. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those are?
If you have some specific on help, I mean, like fielding percentage just means the rate that we are cleanly fielding and throwing the ball. Like, so errors would be like if we overthrew or dropped a ball. Our ERA is how many like earned runs our pitchers are giving up. So like if our defense makes an error, they don't count that as an earned run against. So obviously the lower the ERA, the better off you're probably seeing some good pitching as a unit. Our batting average is just our ability to get hits, obviously, and that's the matrix kind of judge within our at bats, like how many hits within an at bat. So just for inquiring minds, like a good hitter is going to be probably 3 for 10. A 300 average is good, so that means they're still failing 7 out of 10 times. I think what's amazing, if you look at like Khalida, Camille, and people like that and their batting averages, I think that they're going to graduate here with like a 350 plus batting average. Camille was over 400 last year, so she was successful a lot more than she was failing. So yeah, I don't know if there's any other specific ones you have questions about.
Well, those were good examples because, like I said, people hear some of this lingo, especially they're watching Sports Center or something, or they're watching a game and they see these numbers come across the screen on individual players, but they might not know exactly what those numbers mean. And like I said, I played baseball when I was young. So I knew about a lot of the basics of baseball. And I said I was taught slow pitch when I was in junior high school in PE class, and actually back when I was younger, we did have a lot of slow pitch leagues around grown men and grown women in various leagues, and of course I'm a Married with Children fan. I loved Al Bundy and his softball buddies out there competing. So I said it's always been an interesting sport to me. Even, and I kind of hate to say this, even more so than baseball. With baseball, I can't, for me at least, I can't watch a pro baseball game. I can watch a college game. I can't watch a pro baseball game because it's too slow. Softball, college baseball, it always seems like there's some action there. You can always hear people in the background, and I used to do a lot of talking too when I was out there. So, and I know that at least from what I've seen on TV, I know on the college level, there's a lot of talking. And so, is your team a very chatty team when it comes to getting on the other team or encouraging their teammates? Or
Yeah, we're big cheers. It's a part of honestly, I think that's one of the greatest parts of like HBCU culture. In fact, our regional competitors tried to take a couple of our cheers, but our girls are definitely, they put on quite a show, and it was just cool to be able to see them be themselves and everyone be like just so appreciative of what they were bringing, because it's fun. And every now and then they'll say a cheer, and I gotta look over like, man, like I gotta ride with them, but dang, like, but they have a good time in there, especially when we're at our best. They're having a good time.
Okay, okay. And so, something else I need to ask about. You kind of mentioned something about facilities.
Mhm.
When you have home games, do you have your own facility or do you have to play elsewhere?
We play at the Washington Youth Academy. It's in Southeast, about 10, 15 miles from us. Obviously, in DC, leave at the wrong time, it could be a longer drive, but they take really good care of us. It's just not on our campus. So what makes it hard is a lot of our student body is really intrigued about like what's going on with softball. Like they just had a team that won a championship and don't really have a way to be able to watch us because it's a tough ass to ask these kids to go like catch a train on their weekend or Uber over. So again, a beautiful facility. They take care of us. It gets the job done. It just leaves a little bit of a disconnect with the entire like student body and the entire university.
Okay, okay, all right. So, but so generally, I know you said that they do have a tough time traveling to or going out to that particular facility. Do you have a lot of streaming that's done of your games?
No, I mean, we tried to take that on and I'll never do it again. It was just too tough because then they started thinking I was like really in IT. So that's out. But I know that it's something that we've talked about doing out there. I think it's necessary. And obviously on a short term list for me to be able to do. We do have a parent, bless her heart, that does do it and she does an excellent job and gets it out there. And she can take the criticism of people a lot better than I was willing to. But she does a really, really good job. And she even tried to get the semifinal game kind of going. So it was cool.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of wondering if she's the type of person like I am. You know, if I'm sitting out there doing it and I'm doing it for free, and you criticizing me, first thing coming out of my mouth is, "Well, where's your camera?"
No, she
So,
does an amazing job. To be fair, she didn't get nearly as much criticism as I did. She did a really, really good job. It was really clear. She's really into the IT stuff. So it was really, really cool. And it did help our fan engagement and people being able to catch it. So yeah, it was cool.
okay, okay. So, can you tell us about any of your incoming freshmen or transfer students?
Yeah, this year I didn't use the transfer portal this year. We have another big freshman class coming in. We're going to be pretty young, and to be very honest, I think we'll struggle a little early. Just identity, coming off that first one, we lost the core of our pitching, and so I think that they're going to have to find their groove. And I think for when you're a young team that just won, that bounce back has to hit different, and so you want to live in it, but then also what is that going to look like? So it's going to take us a little bit, I think, to find a new identity with such a big freshman class coming in. You lose your pitchers, and I think that people are just so emotional. And I try to tell our girls, do not ride the wave of an emotion. And so I hope that, like, as people see, you're going to see, it's going to be like, whoa, like what's going on over there? This happens every year. I'm pretty sure like some HBCU thing took us completely out of the top 10 at one point. I had a really good team all year. But when you have a big roster and you're trying out different things, which you're supposed to do in the preseason, doesn't always mix at the early. And I can foresee that being a thing this year. The good news is that there's a standard, and now the standard is the standard, and everybody knows like what it's supposed to look like. I think that because we hadn't won one, I come in here with these high standards and these high demands, and it's almost like, well, it's not even working. Like you're not winning. And that's just generate. It doesn't matter. I think that we have to grow to this generation, but generationally, like they want to see it. And the good news is now they've seen it. They've seen the payoff. They know what it feels like when you are disciplined in your preparation and your approach. And they know the standard and they're okay with the standard, even if it inconveniences them because it's worth it in the end to feel what they felt. And so I think that is what I'm most excited about with this championship. It's beautiful. The hardware is beautiful. I got it in my office. I love it. But what I'm most excited about is that now they can like actually believe it because they lived it. And so I don't think ideally I'm not going to have to coach these freshmen on things as a standard in the bar because we're going to have enough sophomores that just lived it and enough juniors and enough seniors to be able to help with that. I got some athletes coming, and I think that based off what we lost, unfortunately, I think our biggest loss was pitching. And again, when you're young, it's just tough because the one thing you can't cheat is experience. But they got some good stuff. Some of the pitchers were going in, and I think amongst them, we got a lot of different looks in regards to the circle. And I'm bringing in some hitters that I think could be really, really special and add a little bit more pop and versatility to our lineup. And so again, I'm just excited. I'm excited to see how it meshes and goes. And yes, I train them, but I always tell the girls, ultimately, you guys make the season. And when they make that decision to be great together and the lineup makes itself, I just use the data, right? What is the numbers telling me which lineup is flowing? And I go with that. So I'm excited to see what lineup they put together this year.
Okay. So you mentioned pitching quite a few times. Can you explain how the pitching rotation is in softball? Because it's a little, I think it's a little different than what I was taught, coming up. I don't know how much the rules changed because, I came up during the late 70s, early 80s, as far as baseball and softball and everything. And I knew there was certain number of days that had to pass before you could pitch again, and you can only pitch so many innings and all this other stuff. But I see, like, there are some programs where I see, them having their star pitcher on one day, then maybe a couple more days, that star pitcher is back out there pitching again. So can you explain how those rotations work?
Yeah, we don't have to have this different rotations as you see, like with baseball, mainly because the pitching is a natural motion. So mechanically and physically, it's not causing as much strain on like the rotator cuff and stuff like that. So there really isn't a limit. Obviously, our student athlete's health is always going to be at the forefront. But you can have an ace that could throw every game if they really wanted to. You just probably wouldn't. This year, like I said, Kiana was like our ace the year she was here, I would say 2 years ago. And we had this year, what was cool is that every weekend kind of presented a new ace. And I had 3 seniors that at any point could be the ace. And then we had our players that kind of come in like middle relievers. I had some girls that were just good at starting a game. Sydney Hickson, I think of her. It was always so refreshing to start a game with her because you knew she was going to attack the strike zone. She wasn't going to walk people. And then we'd rotate her out when we kind of noticed trouble. So I think it depends on your personnel. You could talk to Morgan State, it could be completely different. They could have 2 aces at any point in a year or anyone else. So it depends on the staff and what you have. I just know for us, there's only been 1 year that I felt like we had an ace that, like, if you think of a 3-game series that was starting game 1 and starting game 3, I think that what's cool now is I just got a lot of different looks. And so it's going to depend on the opponent. If you were watching the MEAC tournament, you would have thought Sydney Hickson was my ace because she had the 2 wins against Norfolk State. And against Norfolk State, she was our ace because she was a good matchup for them. Morgan State, Annalise takes down because she was a better matchup for them. So in that series, in that game, that championship series, Annalise was our ace. And so for me, it kind of is always dictated by matchup.
Okay. Well, you actually taught me something else besides just a rotation, because I always thought that there might be a bit of strain because of the underarm motion and the velocity that I saw those young ladies, throwing at with that big ball compared to baseball. So I did not consider that there might be less strain than maybe the overhand pitching motion.
Yeah.
So
overhand is it's more of a.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're good. I can hear you now. Cut out it for a second.
Okay. And so with that underhand motion, can they throw primarily the same pitches that an overhand baseball pitcher can throw?
Yeah, I think the only thing that's going to change is the trajectory, like how it's, obviously it's going to come more from down where baseball comes more overhead, but we can create a slider, a curveball, and an off speed. We have the ability to go up in the zone with the rise ball. which you don't always see in baseball. But yeah, you can mimic a lot of the same pitches for sure.
Okay.
Ultimately, those pitches all have an end goal. We have a way to get those the same kind of end goal.
Okay. Once again, I said that, definitely learning something new, because I had no idea about that. And truthfully, I have some good friends who who are collegiate softball coaches. So thank you very much for educating me on that.
Of course, no
Um,
worries.
so we're gonna move a little bit off the sport, and this is of course a hot topic in uh, athletics, period, not just even collegiate athletics, and that is the spectrum of mental health. I've noticed in more recent years there's been more emphasis placed on it. I've actually seen more athletes who have taken drastic measures with their lives. Unfortunately, talk to us about how you deal with that with your athletes?
I typically, or the only way I feel like is responsible, is for people that have dedicated their life and gone to school to study the brain, and how it works. I think that is where it's an interesting just time in sports that I do not believe that it is even healthy or safe for the same person that's making a lineup and calling pitches and critiquing you, but also building you up to also double down as a therapist, and diagnose you, or and even try to heal you, because one, I can tell you right now, the academy of being a college coach doesn't, at our coaching foundations, they're not telling us how to deal with big time like mental health issues. And I do think that, like, as much as like we're all making this um an athletic thing, I think mental health is just kind of all over. Unfortunately, these poor students that don't have a team or a coach are just dealing with it alone in a dorm, and they don't have the platform. ESPN isn't reporting on them. Because we have a platform, it seems like it's an athlete thing, but it is a life thing. And life is hard. And I think that for me, the only thing that I can be is a filter to the correct resources. And also, just at the end of the day, making it where it is an environment where you're comfortable and we can be open about going to seek the proper help. And I don't want it to ever go down like, man, she handles mental health well. And these coaches, I think you put yourself in a really weird and a risky situation, when you're saying like I can fix this or I can help this, because genuinely that is not within our description, but it is our job, to create an environment where they feel comfortable going to seek those resources. If I am doubling down and I'm making a lineup and I take you out of the lineup, but I'm also acting as your therapist, things are going to get blurred. That's a conflict of interest. And I don't think that it's healthy. I don't think it's safe. And the best thing that we can do is make sure that we have the resources and demand of our athletic departments to have the resources with people who have literally given up their lives to help others, in this regard. And so I try to keep our doctor on deck. Our girls meet with her once a week, especially when you're in the gut of the season. And I think that there's just a fine line. There's a difference between mental health, in sports performance and what that does for you mentally. And when we talk about people taking drastic measures, I don't know that there's been a letter that was like, I struck out and this happened. Like, there's things going on. It's coping. It's so many different layers. And I don't think it's as easy as like, and as black and white, as we would like to believe that it is. And that's what I think is scary. But I also know that there's a lot of people that are in positions where they love this and they love the idea of being able to help people and heal people with mental health, which it is so important. And I think it is super important that we make those people seen and we honor them. They should be getting just as much credit at the end of a year as a coach, because they are huge. I know that our doctor, Dr. Lisa here at Howard, I couldn't do it without her. And she keeps me accountable. She keeps our players accountable, but she's just there and she's present and there is not a conflict of interest. And you need to have someone like that on your team. In fact, I think it demands that for us as coaches. It is not a safe place for us to be trying to navigate those kind of waters. And we need our right hand, and we need them. They are, I think, probably one of the most pivotal parts of any athletic department right now. But also across campus, we need to make sure that we're checking in on those kids as well, whose stories don't get told and trend on Twitter. We need to make sure that they have the appropriate resources as well. It's just important in general. We need to make sure our coaches have the resources of someone to go to, that there's not a conflict of interest that's outside of the university. And so I could go all day. I am like so passionate about this because I just think that we're all being very generic sometimes with our solutions, which is why we keep going on this rabbit race. We need to just invest in that department and make it a priority. And those people need to be seen, felt, and need to be a centerpiece of our university, not just athletics.
Yeah, because I talked I talked to another coach from another sport. He was fortunate to have a relative who's in the mental health field, and so that person, counseled his athletes, and actually, that person got a ring when they won the championship because that person's considered part of their team, and so. Like you said, there's not a one size fit all for that, but it is always interesting to see, how different coaches handle that. Especially, those who have resources versus those who might not. And because it has become a very pivotal thing, and it breaks my heart. It always breaks my heart when I see someone younger than me pass, period.
Yeah.
But it also kind of hurts when I see that a student athlete, has taken, as my pastor would say, a permanent, they made a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And unfortunately, some of them might not have, some people to talk to, or they might feel that way. And me talking to some student athletes who have attempted, and thank God they failed. That was one of the things they kept telling me. I didn't feel I had someone to talk to. And so, thank God I was able to get some of them, point some in a direction where they could talk to a professional, because I'm not the one either. And I have coached for quite a while, but I'm not, I have my own issues, and I probably need one myself. So
I think I need one, and I speak so openly about it with my program. I think that the best thing you can do as a leader is to lose the stigma. But I do think that with social media, everybody is kind of all in on that. We all want a solution. I don't think one person's come out and been like, no, but I do think when you are going through anything in life, there is a level of isolation that you feel internally. I went through tragedy, and I felt completely isolated because I did not know how to share and express everything I was going through. And it was hard, right? And then you have to kind of also fit the role that you're supposed to play. And I think that that's life in general. We go through that at every different landscape. And so the best thing that you can do is just, again, like you were saying, is you can just keep confirming that there are resources. And I think that I know that I want our sports doctor to come immediately and let herself be seen, and let our girls know how to reach out and get help. And I think that that's all for right now. We really just got to keep pushing that. We got to let their presence be felt, almost more important than our athletic directors. Like, you're going to have more interaction with your sports doctor than you probably are your athletic director. And so we always have meetings where you meet your athletic staff. I think it's a very important, it should just be a day one mandatory rule that these student athletes know who they can reach out to, how they can reach them, and what that process will look like.
Okay. Can you also, coming back to your team, can you tell us a bit more about your assistant coach that you mentioned earlier?
Taylor White is my right hand. we kind of just go through we call it the trenches. We're just in the trenches together, and just figuring this out. And so I definitely couldn't do it without her. And she just kind of seconds as like a big sis aunt to my daughter. So it just makes this whole thing. I mean, she is. I don't know that I even still am working at Howard and doing all the things without Taylor White. She's just amazing, and she takes care of the stuff I just quite frankly don't have the energy to do all the time. And definitely the yin to my yang, and it just works out. And her presence in the locker room, in the office, has just made me a better coach. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Okay, all right. So just a few more things. One, we kind of talked earlier about HBCU softball.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a softball tournament or championship for just HBCUs to see who the best is among all HBCUs, or
No, not at this time, no.
okay. Is that something you think that might be needed?
I just try to be practical. I don't, as much as it's needed, I don't know if it's practical financially.
Okay.
So then it would have to be decided, is it worth the funding to try to make this tournament happen? If it's not going to be able to be run smooth and efficiently, then no. But I do think something that could be cool is maybe doing what they do with like a celebration bowl, and maybe having the SWAC champion and the MEAC champion meet once a year. That could be something that's cool, but I don't think it's practical for a tournament, for just being honest, or necessary. Not in my opinion.
Okay. Was there like a SWAC and MEAC challenge or something
There
like
used to
that?
be. I know that there was a couple years ago. There hasn't been, honestly, since even I was at Bethune-Cookman, there hasn't been. I know that Wiggins had said that they used to have something like that. I mean, and that could be cool. But again, financially and getting it to run smoothly, it would need to be something that I feel like would have to grow, and in a commitment from a lot of administrators. And I don't know that you're going to get on the softball side every admin to just jump on board with that and finding a correct location and all that to make it happen. So again, I think that maybe a challenge that is very limited in teams could be realistic with the right athletic departments in the right location. Now that I think that that's something different, but I do not think that there will ever be a point, nor do I deem that it's necessary for there to be like a full just tournament of all the MEAC and the SWAC. But I do think that we could do something to kind of highlight that battle, or like the best of, so that could be really cool for something in the future.
Okay. Now I think there was like I know they did that on the baseball side, with the HBCU World Series, and I was thinking they had one on the softball side. I could not remember. But is there an HBCU softball all-star game?
I know that there's someone I spoke to today that is looking to get something like that going. So it could be something that you see in the future very soon.
Okay. Because I mean, there are good programs. There's some terrific programs around. I know when I was after I left college, I graduated from Kentucky State University, and I know when I was in school, we were in a PWI conference, and it wasn't pretty. But when we transitioned over into the SIAC, our program became the dominant program in the SIAC, and that's how I formed a greater love for collegiate softball, was through my alma mater. And just seeing a lot of the development, I think it is worthwhile to have HBCU programs and even PBI programs elevated to a level where they are given their just due, because a lot of things that are great. One of the things that I always liked about a lot of softball players too was that, as far as I was concerned, softball players, a lot of them are very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And so transitioning from that, what are some of the top majors for your team? Are there any majors that a lot of your young ladies seem to gravitate towards, or are they just, diverse?
Biology and business. I got a couple nursing majors that are mixed in there. Those three I know are typically like something in the sciences are typically at the top. The biology, business, and criminology, something that I see a lot of. And I mean, again, we have a few engineering majors sprinkled in there, but a lot of our sciences and nursing majors and stuff is kind of a core part of my team. But I like to see them all branch out, and they're just also different personalities, and are all wired different. So I do like that there's just such an array. There is the core, obviously, of those ones, but we got our comm majors mixed in there too. Howard is just a very competitive school, so there's really not a jock major here. So all of them are going to be pretty competitive.
Right. Okay. And so when you knock on a parent's door to recruit their student athlete,
Mm-hmm.
is that one of the major conversations that the parents want to have with you, the academics?
I don't have to talk about it because Howard kind of sells itself. So if I do, I'm probably dealing with someone that just hasn't done a lot of homework, and I kind of demand that before we even get going, you do your homework, and I would hope that you have done a little bit of homework. Now, if it's somebody off the street, I see at a field and I like her and I pick up a conversation, that's different. But most of the time, if you've done even a little bit of homework, you know what Howard degree stands for, you know what the university stands for, you know the opportunities that come with being a Howard graduate, and the pride that comes with that. So I don't have to sell that very much. It kind of sells itself. That'll get
Okay.
me into doors, a Howard degree.
Okay. So that's always great to hear. That's always great to hear. And so, as we get ready to wrap up, this is your time to kind of shout out people who you think deserves, to be shouted out, as far as contributing to your program, and also those, you know the people in your life that help support you as well throughout this journey.
Okay. Obviously, my daughter Skylar, she started this journey with me when she was 18 months, and let her mom kind of move her, and had a very unorthodox upbringing. So I'm grateful she allows me to do something that I have great passion for in my family, because if it wasn't for the Tyson family, I wouldn't be able to do it. They always just answer the call when I need it, or when it's just becoming hard to do. I'm grateful for my AD, Carrie Davis, for giving me my first nod at a head coach, and allowing me to build this program, and Paul Bowden for the assistance that he has given me as well, in helping build this program, and my athletes for letting me coach them, and letting me kind of become my own, right? Like, I took this job, first time head coach, and they really let me evolve into the best version of myself. We grew up together, especially that senior class, and I am so grateful for them. My assistant coach, Taylor White, as I've said, I'm nothing without her. She has just made this journey a lot easier, because it is hard. So I'm super grateful for her, and our parents and our families, these families that entrust their child with me. And even if me and their child, right, like, you're gonna have conflict, they're still writing, and they're bought in, and they invest in us. And it is amazing watching them be so proud of our program, and their child at the regional is like an image that I will never ever forget. And I am so grateful for that. I'm grateful for the softball community and its endless support of me and my dreams and my vision, for growing Howard softball and HBCU softball in general. The NFCA has really listened to a lot of my ask and in my dreams, and they're being very intentional about making that stuff happen. And so it's just amazing to be a part of that organization. Yeah, and just anybody that has sent me well wishes and prayers through this year, it just means the world to me. And so, and I can't thank you enough, and thank you doesn't really suffice. But I am super grateful just for everybody, and obviously God.
Okay. All right. Well, I would personally like to shout out Mr. Derek Bryant for being super and setting this up. He's worked with me on getting a lot of coaches interviewed, and I really do appreciate this time that I've spent with you, Coach Tyson, because you like I said, you educated me on a few things. There were some things I thought that I knew, which I evidently didn't, and so I really appreciate you clarifying quite a few things for me, and now I can actually go to some of my buddies who are softball or former softball coaches and have a more intelligent conversation with them. So.
All right, I got you. And I did have one more thing. I want to thank you to my peers at Howard, specifically like our the track coach, Coach Oliver, Coach Ty Grace, and our football coaches. We don't have a home, so a lot of times we have to intrude in other people's homes. And Coach Jow, just finding a way to make it all work on Green Stadium and let us get our work in. So I do want to shout out them as well.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure that they are happy about that, and I probably should have asked you about some of how you work with them a lot, because I do know that in some institutions, some athletic programs, they do share athletes from time to time, especially if a particular sport needs numbers. They might ask a coach, hey, can your coach come out and run for us? Or, can does your athlete have any?
Yeah, I don't have any encounters like that with them. I know this. I know some of them do that with the cross, but not on our end. It's a very just straight professional and just admiration for what we're all trying to do, and it's the coolest feeling ever.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I do want to thank you once again, Coach. This has been terrific, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now I'm talking about young shakes. Chicago 2 representatives. Just James. And this is for my city.
Hey, I do it for my city. I don't plan on going down. If he think I'm going down, then he gone first round. For my city, dog, I ain't never been a chump. And if he thinking I'm a chump, watch him get his head lumped. For my city, dog, I don't plan on going down. If he think I'm going down, then he gone first round. For my city, dog, I ain't never been a chump. And if he thinking I'm a chump, watch him get his head lumped. For my city, cause I feel like I love her so much, like I owe her so much for supplying her touch. I will always respect her, I will never neglect her. Bet you hear her naming like every one of my records. No, I'm not stunting, ain't no future in your frontin', right? Gotta get this money, watch me get it all night. Planet flying top flight, higher than space stations. That's why I gotta grind, cause I need it and I hate waiting. Really, I was debating, didn't think I could make it. Now that I know I'm capable, y'all can love it or hate it. For my city, I'm baking, I'm holding about 50. And if I blow 50, then it's all for my city.